How do I manage my time? I don't really manage it very well most of the time.
I think it's like an eternal struggle. Like
It really
is.
Have
to keep evolving. Like whatever system you have to make it work.
Exactly. Like right now, I'm having a hard time because you're like, yeah, I know exactly what I need to get done by 2 p.m. and I'm gonna do it. And then you open Facebook once just to like check something, and then all of a sudden you're like, you fall down this hole of like, oh my God, what's happening? And like. Your friends are yelling at each other even though they're both on the same team, and it's difficult for me and the people in my life right now to like kind of focus when there's like this much crap going on in the political landscape that it's difficult to ignore. Mm-hmm. But you have to just ignore it sometimes in order to like maintain your productivity level, or at least I do.
So let's talk about 12 Forever, because we all need a party island. So how did this idea develop? Like, what were your influences? Where did this come from?
The idea kind of came from, because I was just, I was thinking about experiences I had as a child. And I went through a period when I was about 11 and 12 where I noticed that a lot of kids around me were growing up faster than I was, and I was still kind of very much in this zone where I still wanted to play with toys, and I still wanted to be excited about these childish things that were no longer seen as like cool, quote unquote. So I would have to do them like in secret, like play with Barbies in my closet under a towel, instead of like, because you were just embarrassed. You're like, I should have grown out of this by now, but I haven't, and I feel weird about it. And like, and so I just wasn't ready to grow up as a lot of my peers seemed to be. So I just kind of went through this phase where I would just like sit in my room and cry and play like Michael Jackson's Have You Seen My Childhood, like full volume. And my mom just comes in and instead of making fun of me like she should have, she kind of like struck a deal with me where she was like, well, how about when you're like in your bedroom, you can act like a kid for as long as you need to, and when you go out in the real world, you have to act your age, kind of thing. Which, so the idea kind of came from that in terms of like a kid needing an escapist environment to run away to when they weren't ready to face the reality of growing up. And Reggie, the protagonist of the show, like she also just happens to kind of need the attention that maybe being a famed superhero would get you. So that's what she takes the form of when she goes to Party Island. And it just kind of developed from there. And in terms of like Party Island itself, I wanted to do like a Pee-wee's Playhouse meets like Mobius kind of vibe where it's like,
I think that was very successful. Vomiting flowers and everything.
meets like Venice Beach in 1992 kind of vibe. So I have had a lot of fun developing 12 Forever for the past 1,000 years that I've been working on it.
So was it just like you were working on it in like your free time outside of work? Like how many years from like when you first like drew the first thing that led to it versus like when you pitched it to Cartoon Network?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I kind of actually I had drawn a little picture of this character just for fun, and then I remember my friend Jason Capraz, who's now an executive at Universal, NBC, he had just casually mentioned, he was like, you should make a show based off that character. That's a great character. And I kind of like remembered that he said that, but I didn't really do anything with it yet. And then it was actually a different network that had asked me to kind of develop some ideas for possible shows. And then I did pitch them this. I took like a month off of doing anything else, and I just wrote pitch Bible for 12 Forever. And then I pitched it to that network that had suggested I come up with the idea, and then they didn't end up being interested. But so I took it to Cartoon Network, and they were interested. So, and Katie Krentz, the executive I was working with at Cartoon Network, was just incredibly supportive, and I was so excited that Cartoon Network wanted to do something with a female protagonist, or that's what I was told in that moment. And, but yeah, so, and they did end up ultimately passing on it, but because Cartoon Network, has their own brand and their own direction of where they want to go with their programming, and it didn't completely fit with that, which is, fine and valid, because, I mean, at the end of the day, was given the opportunity to make a pilot that was essentially very little had changed from what I pitched to them, which is it's a unique thing to have happen in this industry, that you actually get to make a pilot that was essentially what you pitched. Because at least I'd never had that experience before, having like worked on developing other things with helping other people develop their things. Because this was the first thing I've ever pitched solo. And also, Cartoon Network does this cool thing where they release their pilots online, so then you get to share your little short with like an international audience, which is it's amazing. It was incredibly gratifying experience to get that feedback from like kids around the world in terms of them responding positively to it. And yeah, so I mean, you can't help but feel just lucky to be a part of it, regardless of like the outcome of whether you get a series or not. It's like even the shorts program is just such a great opportunity. So yeah, so I've been developing 12 Forever for other places, and we'll see how it goes.
Hoping for
Fingers
that.
crossed.
So the deal with, your main character is a girl. I was just kind of wondering, did you have long hair at that age?
I didn't. I did. I had long hair when I was 12. That was like, only had long hair like 2 years of my life. When I was 12, and then again when I was like 23. Those are like the 2 years that I had long hair. But no, the appearance of Reggie is more based on my roommate Kelsey Abbott, who also does the voice of Reggie.
Oh, she has such a great voice.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, and she has long, naturally red hair, and like and she's just like this beautiful lady. And she grew up in like a small town in Iowa, and so like parts of Reggie's character are based on Kelsey, and other parts are based on me. So she's kind of like this combination Julia Kelsey.
That's really cool. I also love that you cast Matt Berry as the villain, the Butt Witch.
Isn't he amazing?
Yeah, I love him in the IT crowd so much.
Oh, I'm obsessed with him. I was so happy that he was able to do that.
Yeah, and I think his like sidekick like called him ma'am, because like he doesn't change his voice, like he's not being a female, but he was referred to as a female.
Yeah,
is that accurate?
Yeah, I got asked this a couple times by like kids on the internet, and like even though I refer to the Butt Witch sometimes as like her or ma'am, I mean it's kind of like a genderless just being. Like the Butt Witch is just supposed to represent Reggie's confusion about adolescence and adulthood and like the changing female body and like puberty and all that. Was a not so subtle image of like a voluptuous woman covered in red, and like having the deep male British voice just kind of added another level of referencing like your voice changing. And yeah, I just really wanted the Butt Witch to be confusing. I had the appearance of looking like a boy for much of my childhood and my teenage years, and that was something that, like I would like get stopped from going into women's restrooms, et cetera, and I would never, like people would like call me a boy or like a dyke and stuff, but then they would mean it like in an insulting way, but it just like, it never, I was always like, that's so strange that would be like insulting to call, or how it would be equally insulting to call a feminine looking boy like a woman, or you look like a woman. Like I just don't understand why that's even an insult. Like I think gender is really fun to play with, and I know it's like it's a sensitive subject in this day and age, but I usually tend to like agree with RuPaul's views on gender, where it's something that shouldn't be taken so seriously. Like I think you should be able to play around with it, and like if you're feeling more masculine one day, celebrate that. If you're feeling more feminine the next day, celebrate that. Like in my own personal style, like I am extremely feminine some days, and like wearing, suits the next day. And like I remember I wore like a fake mustache to school one day in high school just because I like wanted to know how it felt, and like shaved my head. And it's something that I think people commit to too much.
I like the idea of celebrating however you feel that day.
Yeah.
That's really nice, I think. And not taking it seriously.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the rights for your gender should be taken very seriously in terms of legal rights, but in terms of just like drag and dressing up in other genders' clothing, like I like the idea of playing around with that and expectations of that, and yeah.
So, what did you learn through this entire process of creating a pilot for Cartoon Network?
I mean, I've learned so much. I guess the number one thing is just like stay true to yourself, even if you feel like you're not doing something the right way. Because there are a million different ways to get to 100, you know? And it's like everyone's path is going to be completely different developing a show. And like the fact that you have a unique way of doing it is just going to make your show stand out. And to not feel pressure to like use tried and true like voice actors or tried and true formulas when creating your show, because the thing that's going to make it exciting is the new way that you're doing it. Like, you know, and don't be scared to like involve your friends and your specific kind of special bond that you have with them, and like bringing your real life experiences into it, like your very, very specific real life experiences, because that's what's going to make the show stand out and feel different and feel more like you expressing your own point of view.
What do you hope people like walk away with after watching 12 Forever?
Well, I mean, the pilot was, it was so long ago. Like if I were to do a series now, I would, I mean, the thing that I'm trying to write is more, the message is more about like it being okay to move on from childhood, and like it's okay to progress and grow up. That doesn't mean that your childhood was anything less beautiful and amazing. And to just and to also, yeah, to just basically the main message that I wanted to get across is just to be okay with change. And at the end of the day, there's no way to avoid aging. And you can either fight against it or you can embrace it in your own way. And you don't have to age like everyone else does. You can do it your own way, and like that's okay, and that's exciting. So I guess that's kind of the mindset that I've been in with 12 Forever from the get-go, is just like it's also just me working through my own shit with like aging and what that's meant to me my whole life, and like why is that something to be scared of, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, with everything I make, I would hope that the takeaway is just people being like, oh yeah, I see myself in that, or I can identify with that, and I feel less alone in some way. I mean, to me, that's like always the goal with whatever I make, is it making someone else feel like, oh yeah, I can relate to that, and now I feel less alone. So that's, because I don't know, I guess that relates back to a lot of like, I think I was kind of a relatively lonely kid, and I sought out a lot of, you know, fictional characters as my, like, role models and best friends, for lack of a better term. And, like, I would like to create things for that kid, you know, who maybe can't find themselves in their immediate environment, but they can find themselves on a television show or a movie. So, lonely, sad kids.
So, I'm tearing up.
Oh,
so
no.
Know, that was beautifully said.
Oh, wow, thank you.
That's amazing. I believe in everything you're saying.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
This seems like a shame to for what I'm about to follow that up with, but I just want to acknowledge some of my favorite lines.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Why is there a man in my drink? And the king of the beach has blessed your beverage. Those are two of my favorite lines.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I really liked the idea of like these two Midwestern kids kind of being infatuated with Southern California's surf culture, like something they really have no concept of outside of like the Capri Sun commercials they see on TV, you know?
Yeah, and California Kung Fu.
Exactly.
It's so goofy. And it was so stylized to like what the 80s.
Right.
Like I love 80s style, so cool.
Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan of 80s music and synthesizers and all that. So that's something that the music was one of the most fun aspects of making that to me. It was working with some composers we used on Yo Gabba Gabba, Jaron Gibbs and Adam Dybert. I just love working with them, and I think they add so much humor through their music as well.
Like, what do you feel the studios look for in your, like, initial pitch?
In, like, an initial pitch, I mean, like, enthusiasm, it relating back to a personal experience of a creator. I mean, I think that's important all around, is that this is something that's coming from you. This isn't just like, you guys need a show about a hamster, I'll give you a show about a hamster. You know, like, I mean, you can give them a show about a hamster, but maybe, like, if you relate it back to, like, something or someone in your life and your past, it makes it so much more interesting.
Well, how about what they look for in the person who's doing the pitch?
I think they look for... Well, that's a good question. I mean, they look for so many things.
Because it seems like it's like 50-50, you know, like you have to have a great idea, but you also have to be someone that you want to work with.
Yeah, well, that's a huge one, is being pleasant to be around is, like, super important. If you're, like, a big old dick, like, no one's gonna want to have you around unless you're really talented.
Uh-huh.
You gotta either be, like, really, really ungodly talented, or you have to be really, really nice. Honestly, if you have just a great idea and it's fleshed out and you have, like, this world or this just amazing, interesting point of view, and you're, like, a nice person, and you either are an artist or you know an artist who's done artwork for you, I mean, that's all you need. Just go in there with, like, a lot of enthusiasm and positivity, and just, you know, be yourself sounds so lame, but, like, mine your own personal experiences, and just make something that you're passionate about, because the more passionate you are, the more people are going to get excited about it. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, and you better be excited about it, because it could be years
exactly.
that you're working on it.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's very clear after speaking with you tonight that you really value your voice and what you have to bring to the table. Did you always feel that way, or how did you develop that confidence?
No, I was not confident at all growing up. I was a really, really shy kid, to the point that, like, my parents, like, sent me to therapy and stuff, because I just, like, had a really hard time making friends, and I used to kind of have this mentality. And all through high school, I was, like, I was a very morose teenager, and very, like, I went to a very religious school, and I was not a religious person, and it made me feel really alienated and angry, and I was just a real angry piece of shit. I was just, like, a real jerk. And, like, and I look back at those days now, and I'm just like, I'm really grateful to my parents for putting up with me, because I was just miserable. And I thought it was, like, really, really cool to be miserable. And then even through college, I kind of had a hard time, but I was kind of getting out of it. And then when I moved to LA, I made a really